Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Patience. So today we are going to be making this beautiful long dress with a keyhole back and a side slit. So before we get started, kindly click the subscribe button. If you have done that, let's get into it. So I'll be using the sequin fabric, and this is 2 yards, and I'll also be using this chiffon fabric, and this is 4 yards. So I've gone ahead to draft the basic bodice. This is a dartless basic bodice. So if you don't know how to draft a basic bodice, I have a video on how to draft a basic bodice, and I'll put the link on the description box below. So this is the shoulder line, the chest line, bust line, and the waist line. And I've gone ahead to take my circumference measurements, and so I drafted my shoulder to waist, which is 17 inches. So I added ½ inch for joining allowance, that's 17.5 inches. And on the side seam allowance, I used 1 inch, as you can see. So that is it. And this is my front and my back armhole. So for the neckline, I used 3.5 inches for the width of the neck, and I also used 3.5 inches for the depth of the neck. So that is it. So this is the front piece, and I'll be using it as a pattern to cut out the back, and I'll cut out the back armhole first. So I'll be using the front piece as a pattern to cut out the back. So I'll place the back piece this way. So the back piece is going to have like a keyhole at the center of the back. So I'm not going to be adding a zip to the dress. So there's no point leaving a zipper allowance at the back. So I'm just going to pin this down. I'll align it and pin it down. So I'll be using the same neck for the front and the back piece. So I'll cut out the back armhole first, as you can see. So this is the back piece. I just extended the lines, and I'll cut out the front armhole. So I'm just going to keep the front piece aside, and I'll cut it out on my fabric this way. So for the back piece, I'm going to cut out the keyhole. So to create the keyhole, I am going to explain it this way. So if you want it to really open, you can use about 3.5 to 4 inches. But if you want it not too open, you can use 2.5 inches. And if you want it a bit open, you can use 1.5 inches. So I'm using 2.5 inches, and from the chest line, I'll come down by 2.5 inches. And I'll also mark the same 2.5 inches I marked on the waistline. And I'm trying to create a curve here. So the next thing I'm going to do is to make a curved line from this point to this point down to the edge of the neckline. So I'll use a curved ruler. Make a curve this way down to this point, and I'll make another curved line from this point to the edge of the neckline. So I'll blend this part this way. So if you're using more than 2.5 inches, you just connect it the same way, and that is it. So I'm going to cut this out. So my waist circumference divided by 2 is 18 inches, plus the 1 inch on both sides for side seam allowance is 20 inches. So this is 20 inches, and this is how the back piece is going to come out. So my front and back piece are ready. So I'm going to cut this on my fabric. So I'll be using this sequin fabric on the upper part of the dress, and I'll make sure the circumference measurements are on the stretchy part of the fabric. And I'll be using the chiffon fabric on the lower part of the dress. So the length of the chiffon fabric is 60 inches. So I'll be using 50 inches from the waist to the full length of the dress, and I'll also add 2 inches that I'll use to hem the lower part of the dress, and on the waist I'll add ½ inch that I'll use to join the upper part of the dress. So I'm going to cut out the 7.5 inches. So that is it. So I'll be adding a band on the waist. So from this measurement, I'm going to take out about 1 or 1.5 inches for the band on the waist. So I'll take out 1 inch or 1.5 inches for the band. So I'm just going to cut it out and replace it with the band. So on the band, I'm going to add ½ inch on both sides that I'll use to join the upper part of the dress and the lower part of the dress. So I've cut it out on the fabric, as you can see, and I doubled it because the fabric is too light. And I'll be using one as the lining. So this is it. So this is the front piece, and this is the back piece. So to trace the back piece, make sure your fabric is folded into 2, and then make sure you mark the 2.5 inches on your fabric and make the curve before tracing it out. So I'll sew by 1/4 inch this way. I'll make sure I follow the curved line, and also sew by 1/4 inch on the neckline. So that is on the fabric and the lining. So I'll do the same thing on the front piece. I'll sew on 1/4 inch on the neckline, and that is it. So I've done that. As you can see, joined the neck, and this is how the back piece came out. So I ironed a hairstay on it for the fabric and the lining to be together. So right now I'll pick one side as the good side and the other as the wrong side. So I'll be joining the front and the back piece together. So I'll place good sides together, and then I'll pin down the shoulder. I'll be sewing by the ½ inch I left for allowance, and then I'll also pin down the side, and I'll sew on the 1 inch I left for side same allowance. So I've done that. I've joined the side seam. As you can see. So remember, I used 2.5 inches on fold for the keyhole. So this is 5 inches. And on this part, I'll be adding a button. So that is it. So I've gone ahead to cut out the band for the waist. So this is 2.5 inches. So I'll be using 1.5 inches for the band, and I added ½ inch on both sides. As you can see, I ironed a hairstay on it, and I ironed the ½ inch on both sides. So this is 1.5 inches for my band. So if you don't have to iron a hairstay on it anyway, I just want it to be a bit thick. So that is it. Now I'll be attaching it to the dress. So the length of the band is my waist circumference, and I added 2 inch for zipper allowance on both sides. So I'm going to pin it down from the middle this way on the ½ inch. That's on one of the ½ inch I left on the band. So I'll pin it down all through this way. So when I get to the back, I'm going to mark, that is from this point, I'm going to mark the 2.5 inches I marked for my keyhole, and I'll fold in the remaining 1 inch for my zipper allowance, and I'll pin it down, and I'll do the same thing on the other side of the band. So I'm going to attach my zip here, and this is the 5 inch for the keyhole. So I'll go and sew on the 1/2 inch, that is on one part of the band, and I'll come back and show you. So I've done that, and this is still 5 inches, as you can see. And I ironed in the 1 inch on both sides for zipper allowance. So I have divided the chiffon fabric into 2. So I have 2 yards here and 2 yards here. Now this is the front piece and this is the back piece. So for the front piece, which is 2 yards, that is 72 inches. So I divided 72 by 3, that is 24 inches. So I'll cut out 24 inches for the slit, and for the back piece I'll divide it into 2 equal halves for the zip. So I've done that, and this is the front piece. So I'm going to place good sides together this way, as you can see, and then I will mark where I want my slit to stop. That is 10 inches. So I'll mark 10 inches, and I'm going to pin it down. Now I'll sew by 1 inch from the 10 inches upwards, and I'm going to hem this part. I'll fold in 1/2 inch and fold in 1/2 inch again on both sides for my slit. So that is it for the front piece, and on the back piece I am going to also place good sides together this way, and then I'll mark the 1 inch for zipper allowance, and I'll also mark where I want my zip to stop, that is on 10 inches, and I'll sew from this 10 inches down to the hemline. And I'm just going to iron in the 1 inch for zipper allowance this way. So this is the front piece. I've done that. I've joined the 10 inch for the slit, and I've also hemmed the slit area. So this is how it came out. And this is the back piece. I've also joined the zipper allowance, and this is the 10 inch I left. So I'll be joining the front and the back piece together. So I'll place good sides together this way, and then I'll sew on the 1 inch for side seam allowance. So I've done that. I've joined the side seam. Now I am going to gather the waist. So I'll use the longest stitch on my sewing machine to sew on 1/2 inch round the waist. So, and I'll stop at this 1 inch for zipper allowance. After doing that, I am going to hem the lower part with the 2 inches I left for hemming allowance. So I've done that, and I made sure it is up to 36 inches. That is my waist circumference, and I stitch on it to secure it. So I stopped at the 1 inch for zipper allowance. So now I'll be attaching the upper part of the dress. So I'll place good sides together this way, and then I'll align the zipper allowance. I'll be sewing on the other half of the band. So before I do that, from the midpoint of the front piece, I am going to mark my bust span measurement, which is 4 inches. So it depends on which side you want the slit, either on the left or the right side. So if you want it on the right side, from the midpoint, you mark the bust span measurement. So I want it on the left side. So from the midpoint, I'll mark 4 inches for my bust span measurement. and then I'll pin it down, align the zipper allowance, and when I get to this side seam, I'll make sure they are aligned. I'll make sure the side seam are aligned, and I'll pin it down. And I'll also make sure the slit area and the 4 inches for the bust band measurements are also aligned, and I'll pin it down. Also, when I get to the other side seam, I will make sure the side seams are aligned, and I'll continue to pin it down. So after doing that, I'll sew on the other 1/2 inch of the band. So I've done that, and this is how it came out. And I made sure they are aligned. As you can see, my slit is on the bust band measurement. So that is it, and this is how the back is. So right now I will attach the zip. So I'll place good sides together and I'll pin both sides. So I'll make sure this part of the band is aligned when I'm fixing my zip. So I'm just going to cut out the excess because I'm using a long zip. So I'll cut out the excess and I'll fold it in, and I'll stitch on it. So this part that is open, I'll use a hemming gum to fold it in. So I've gone ahead to cut out the sleeve, as you can see. So I left about 1/2 inch for side seam allowance, and this is it. So I have a video on how to draft a basic sleeve, and I'll also put the link on the description box below. So the length I used here is 20 inches. So I want my sleeve length to be 21.5 inches. So I'll be adding a band to the sleeve. So the length is 5 inches and on fold it is 2.5 inches. So I'll use 1/2 inch to join to the sleeve. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the round wrist. So what I have here is 3.5 inches. So that is 7 inches. And what I have here is 8 inches. So I'll be using 1 inch for side seam allowance. So I'm just going to place good sides together this way, and I'll pin it down. So I'll sew on the 1 inch, and after sewing on the 1 inch, I'll fold it back this way to get my 2.5 inches. And after doing that, I'm going to tuck it in this way, and I'll sew round by 1/2 inch. So this is how it's going to come out. And after doing that, I'll attach my sleeve. So I've done that, and this is how it came out. I've attached my zip and also the sleeve and the band, as you can see. So on this part, I'm going to create a buttonhole, and I'm going to attach a button. So I'll be using the bias tape to do that. So I'll fold it into 2 this way, and then I'll fold it again, and I'll attach it on the wrong side of the dress. So I'll pin it down, and I'll sew it to secure it. So I'll attach this button also. So I've done that. And this is how beautiful it came out. So guys, if you have not subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? Kindly give this video a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell just to be updated when I upload a new video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.